In a large, busy city filled with towering buildings and the constant hum of activity, there stood an office building that seemed no different from the others around it. It was home to a company where hundreds of employees worked day in and day out, typing on keyboards, attending meetings, and rushing through hallways with papers in hand. Among them was a man named Samuel, who quietly went about his job without drawing much attention. He wasn't one of the executives or managers. He wasn't even someone people stopped to greet. Samuel was the janitor, and over time, he had earned a nickname, Simple. The name stuck not because Samuel lacked intelligence, but because he rarely spoke. Day after day, he pushed his cleaning cart down the long corridors, sweeping floors, wiping windows, and emptying trash bins. His presence was so unobtrusive that most people didn't notice him unless they needed something cleaned or fixed. Employees passed him in the hallways, their heads buried in phones or laptops, too preoccupied to acknowledge the man keeping their workspace tidy. Sometimes during lunch breaks, Samuel would sit alone in a corner of the break room, eating a sandwich wrapped in plain paper while others laughed and chatted nearby. Even then, he kept to himself, listening more than he spoke. Despite being overlooked, Samuel took pride in his work. He believed that every job, no matter how small it seemed, played an important role in making the world function smoothly. To him, cleaning wasn't just about tidying up. It was about creating an environment where people could focus and thrive. If the desks were spotless and the floors gleamed, maybe someone would have a better day. Maybe a clear mind would lead to a brilliant idea. These thoughts gave Samuel satisfaction even if no one else noticed. What no one realized, however, was that beneath Samuel's quiet exterior lay a remarkable secret. While everyone assumed he lived a simple life, Samuel carried within him a wealth of knowledge that would surprise anyone who took the time to get to know him. But Samuel wasn't the type to share this part of himself freely. He preferred to keep his talents hidden, believing that his value came not from standing out, but from contributing quietly behind the scenes. This mindset shaped how he approached both his work and his interactions with others. Samuel's routine rarely changed. Every morning he arrived at the office before sunrise, ensuring everything was ready for the employees when they began their day. He knew the building like the back of his hand, the squeaky floorboard near the elevator, the stubborn coffee stain on the carpet by the water cooler, and the exact amount of polish needed to make the glass doors sparkle. Over the years, he had developed a rhythm, moving efficiently from one task to the next. By the time the first wave of employees trickled in, Samuel had already completed half his duties for the day. Though he stayed invisible to most, there were moments when Samuel couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation. People talked about promotions, deadlines, and office politics as they walked past him. Occasionally, he caught discussions about international clients or projects involving foreign languages. Samuel listened intently, though he never let on that he understood more than he appeared to. In fact, his understanding went far beyond what anyone could imagine. One particular morning, something unusual happened that would change everything. A new CEO was arriving from overseas to take charge of the branch office, and the entire staff gathered in the conference room for the introduction. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as employees filed in, adjusting ties and smoothing skirts. Everyone wanted to make a good impression. Samuel, meanwhile, slipped into the room unnoticed, pushing his cleaning cart along the wall. He planned to tidy up afterward, but for now he lingered in the back, observing silently. When the CEO entered, he began speaking with confidence, though his accent revealed that English wasn't his native tongue. As he switched between broken English and another language mid-sentence, some employees exchanged confused glances. When it came time for questions, many hesitated, unsure how to communicate effectively with him. It was in this moment of uncertainty that Samuel did something unexpected, something that would leave the entire room stunned. As the CEO paused to invite questions, the room fell silent. Employees glanced at each other nervously, unsure how to respond. Some whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what to say or how to phrase their words clearly enough for the new leader to understand. Others simply avoided eye contact, hoping someone else would step up first. The tension in the air was palpable, and Samuel, still standing quietly in the corner with his cleaning cart, observed it all. Then, something remarkable happened. One of the managers leaned over to a colleague and muttered in Spanish, "I don't think I can ask my question. He won't understand me." Samuel, who had been listening without meaning to, realized the manager was talking about the CEO. Without thinking twice, he spoke up in perfect Spanish, saying loud enough for everyone to hear, "Actually, he might understand you better than you think." The room froze. All eyes turned toward Samuel, the man who had always been in the background, unnoticed and unheard. For a moment, no one said anything. They stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. Even the CEO stopped mid-sentence, turning his attention to the source of the unexpected voice. Samuel stood there calmly, holding his mop, like it was the most natural thing in the world to interrupt a high-level meeting. The CEO broke the silence first. With a curious smile, he replied in fluent Spanish, thanking Samuel for his input and asking him to continue. Samuel didn't hesitate. Switching seamlessly between Spanish and English, he explained that the manager's concern wasn't uncommon when dealing with international clients. He suggested that using simpler language and focusing on key points could help bridge communication gaps. His advice was practical, delivered with confidence, and completely unexpected coming from someone like him. But Samuel wasn't done yet. As the discussion continued, another employee raised a point in broken French, struggling to express herself fully. Once again, Samuel stepped in, this time speaking flawless French. He clarified her thoughts, translating them smoothly into English so the entire room could follow along. By now, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. What started as an awkward introduction had transformed into a lively exchange, thanks largely to Samuel's unexpected contributions. The employees were stunned. How could someone they had dismissed as simple possess such advanced language skills? Whispers spread quickly throughout the room. "Did you know he spoke French? And Spanish too? That's incredible. Why didn't he ever tell us?" These murmurs reflected not just surprise but also a growing sense of respect. For years they had underestimated Samuel, assuming he was nothing more than a quiet janitor. Now they were beginning to see him in a completely different light. Even the CEO seemed impressed. After wrapping up the initial introductions, he approached Samuel personally, shaking his hand and expressing gratitude for his assistance. "You've made quite an impression," the CEO said warmly. "Where did you learn to speak so many languages?" Samuel shrugged modestly, explaining that he grew up in a neighborhood where multiple languages were spoken every day. Over time, he picked them up naturally, practicing whenever he could. Later, during a brief period living abroad, he honed his skills further. It was clear that his abilities weren't just a hobby. They were a deep part of who he was. Despite the newfound attention, Samuel remained humble. When colleagues later asked why he had never mentioned his talents before, he simply smiled and said, "It never felt important. My job is to clean, not to talk." This response only added to the admiration people felt for him. Here was a man who could have easily sought recognition or demanded more responsibility, yet he chose instead to stay grounded and focus on doing his work well. His humility struck a chord with everyone, including the CEO, who began to view Samuel not just as a janitor, but as someone with untapped potential. As the days passed, Samuel found himself included in conversations he would normally have avoided. Employees who once walked past him without a second glance now stopped to chat, eager to learn more about his background and experiences. Some even joked that they should start calling him multilingual Sam instead of Simple. Though Samuel laughed along with them, he didn't let the attention change him. He continued doing his job with the same dedication as always, ensuring the office remained clean and welcoming for everyone. Still, the ripple effects of that meeting lingered. The CEO, impressed by Samuel's ability to connect across languages, began inviting him to join certain discussions involving international clients or partners. At first, Samuel hesitated, feeling unsure about stepping outside his usual role. But the CEO reassured him, emphasizing that talent should never go to waste. Slowly, Samuel agreed to participate, finding ways to contribute beyond just cleaning. Whether it was helping translate documents or offering insights during strategy sessions, he proved himself invaluable time and again. For Samuel, this shift brought both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, he enjoyed being able to use his skills in meaningful ways. On the other hand, he worried about losing the simplicity of his old life. Yet through it all he remained true to himself, refusing to let the spotlight alter his core values. To him, success wasn't about titles or promotions. It was about making a difference, no matter how small. And as the weeks went by, it became clear that Samuel's presence had already made a significant impact, not just on the company but on the people around him. As word of Samuel's abilities spread throughout the office, curiosity about him grew. Employees who had once walked past him without a second thought now made an effort to stop and talk. Some asked how he learned so many languages, while others wanted to know why he had kept such a valuable skill hidden for so long. Samuel answered their questions patiently, always with a modest smile. He explained that growing up in a multicultural neighborhood exposed him to different languages early on. Neighbors spoke Spanish, French, and English, often switching between them depending on the situation. Over time, Samuel absorbed these languages naturally, practicing by listening and repeating what he heard. Later, during a brief period living abroad, Samuel decided to take his skills further. He spent hours reading books, watching movies, and talking to native speakers to improve his fluency. But even after mastering multiple languages, he never felt the need to show off his abilities. To him, speaking French or Spanish was just another part of who he was, no more special than breathing or walking. His focus remained on doing his job well, ensuring the office stayed clean and comfortable for everyone else. Despite his humility, people couldn't help but admire Samuel. They were struck not only by his linguistic talents but also by his attitude. Here was a man who could have easily sought recognition or demanded a better position. Yet he chose instead to stay in the background, quietly contributing in ways no one expected. This quiet confidence resonated deeply with those around him, including the CEO, who continued to find new ways to involve Samuel in important discussions. One day, the CEO called Samuel into his office. It wasn't unusual anymore for Samuel to be asked to join meetings, but this time felt different. The CEO greeted him warmly and gestured for him to sit down. "Samuel," he began, "I've been thinking about your contributions lately. You've been incredibly helpful, especially when it comes to communicating with our international partners. I believe your skills could benefit the company even more if we gave you a formal role." Samuel listened carefully, his expression calm but curious. The idea of taking on a bigger responsibility intrigued him, but he also worried about stepping too far out of his comfort zone. Sensing his hesitation, the CEO smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to decide right away," he said. "Just think about it. We'd love to have someone like you, a person who understands both the practical side of running an office and the complexities of cross-cultural communication." Over the next few days, Samuel thought long and hard about the offer. He knew it would mean leaving behind the simplicity of his current life. No longer could he blend into the background, unnoticed and unbothered. Instead, he'd be thrust into a world of meetings, deadlines, and expectations. Yet, at the same time, he recognized the opportunity to make an even greater impact. If his skills could help the company succeed, wasn't that worth considering? Eventually, Samuel decided to accept the CEO's proposal, but with one condition. He insisted on keeping his cleaning cart nearby as a reminder of where he came from, and to stay grounded. The CEO agreed, impressed by Samuel's humility and determination to remain connected to his roots. From that moment on, Samuel's role in the company began to shift. While he still performed some of his old duties, he also took on new responsibilities, assisting with translation projects, helping draft emails to international clients, and even attending high-level strategy sessions. At first, adjusting to his new role wasn't easy. Samuel found himself navigating unfamiliar territory, learning how to balance his previous tasks with his expanded responsibilities. There were moments when he doubted whether he belonged in meetings alongside executives and managers. But every time he felt uncertain, he reminded himself of the CEO's words. Talent should never go to waste. Those words gave him the courage to push forward, even when things felt overwhelming. His colleagues noticed the change too. Gone was the nickname, Simple. In its place, they started referring to him as multilingual Sam, or simply Samuel, acknowledging him as a peer rather than just a janitor. Many expressed admiration for how gracefully he handled his new duties, while others sought his advice on everything from language tips to cultural etiquette. Samuel welcomed these interactions, happy to share what he knew, but he never let the attention go to his head. Even as his role evolved, he remained the same humble, hard-working man everyone had come to respect. Outside of work, Samuel's life began to transform as well. For years, he had lived a quiet existence, content with solitude and routine. Now, however, he found himself invited to social gatherings and team-building events that he would have avoided in the past. At first, he declined most invitations, preferring to spend his evenings reading or taking long walks. But over time, he started accepting a few, realizing that connecting with others didn't have to mean losing himself. These experiences opened doors to friendships he hadn't anticipated, enriching his life in unexpected ways. Meanwhile, the company itself began to see positive changes thanks to Samuel's involvement. Projects involving international clients ran more smoothly, and misunderstandings caused by language barriers became less frequent. Employees credited Samuel for fostering a more inclusive environment, where diversity was celebrated rather than overlooked. Even small gestures like greeting coworkers in their native languages inspired others to embrace cultural differences and learn from one another. Through it all, Samuel stayed true to his values. Despite his newfound prominence, he refused to let pride take over. Every morning he arrived at the office before sunrise, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. And though his days were busier than ever, he made sure to carve out time for the little things that mattered, like polishing the glass doors until they sparkled or tidying up the break room after lunch. These acts weren't just part of his job. They were reminders of the importance of staying grounded no matter how much success came his way. By the end of the year, Samuel's transformation was undeniable. What had once seemed like an ordinary life filled with mundane tasks had blossomed into something extraordinary. He had gone from being an overlooked janitor to becoming a valued member of the team, respected not only for his language skills, but also for his character. Yet through it all, he remained the same quiet, thoughtful man who believed in the power of humility and hard work. And as he pushed his cleaning cart down the familiar hallways, now gleaming brighter than ever, Samuel knew he had found a perfect balance, a way to shine without losing sight of who he truly was. As the months passed, Samuel's role in the company continued to grow. He was no longer just the janitor who surprised everyone with his language skills. He had become an integral part of the team. His days were now a mix of old and new responsibilities. In the mornings, he still arrived early to clean the office, ensuring everything was spotless before the employees arrived. But by mid-morning, he often found himself sitting in meetings, offering insights that others couldn't. Whether it was translating documents, helping draft emails for international clients, or explaining cultural nuances, Samuel's contributions made a noticeable difference. At first, some of the higher-ups were hesitant about relying on someone without a formal title or degree. They questioned whether Samuel truly belonged in such important discussions. But as time went on, even the skeptics had to admit that his presence added value. For example, during one meeting with a French client, negotiations hit a snag because of a misunderstanding over a specific term. The client grew frustrated and the mood in the room turned tense. That's when Samuel stepped in, calmly clarifying the issue in fluent French. Within minutes, the tension eased, and the conversation resumed smoothly. By the end of the meeting, the deal was sealed, and the CEO thanked Samuel personally for his quick thinking. These kinds of moments became more frequent as Samuel gained confidence in his new role. He stopped doubting whether he belonged and started embracing the opportunities to help. His colleagues noticed this change too. Where once they might have hesitated to ask for his input, they now sought him out willingly. Managers began consulting him on projects involving foreign markets, knowing his knowledge extended beyond language to include cultural customs and business practices. Even junior employees felt comfortable approaching him, asking for advice on how to communicate effectively with overseas partners. Despite all the attention, Samuel never let it go to his head. He remained humble, always quick to remind people that his job wasn't about titles or recognition, but about making things easier for everyone. "I'm still here to clean," he would say with a chuckle whenever someone complimented him. "Just because I can speak a few languages doesn't mean I've forgotten my mop." This attitude endeared him even more to those around him. It wasn't just his skills that inspired respect. It was his character. One day, the company announced plans to expand its operations into several new countries. This meant hiring additional staff, setting up offices abroad, and building relationships with local businesses. The CEO called a special meeting to discuss the strategy, inviting key members of the team, including Samuel. During the session, the CEO outlined the challenges they faced, from language barriers to navigating unfamiliar cultures. As he spoke, Samuel listened intently, jotting down notes in his neat handwriting. When it came time for suggestions, Samuel raised his hand. "If we're going to succeed in these markets," he said, "we need to understand not just their words but also their way of thinking. Language is important, but so are gestures, traditions, and values." He went on to share examples from his own experiences, explaining how small details, like using the correct greeting or understanding dining etiquette, could make a big difference in building trust. His insights sparked a lively discussion, with others chiming in to add their thoughts. The CEO nodded thoughtfully throughout the exchange. When the meeting ended, he pulled Samuel aside. "That was excellent," he said. "Your perspective is exactly what we need as we move forward. I'd like you to take a leading role in preparing our teams for these expansions." Samuel blinked, in surprise. Leading a project? It was a responsibility far greater than anything he had imagined for himself. But the CEO's faith in him gave him courage. After some consideration, Samuel agreed, promising to do his best. Over the next few weeks, Samuel threw himself into the task. He worked closely with HR to develop training programs for employees heading overseas. These sessions covered not only language basics, but also cultural tips, helping participants avoid common mistakes. Samuel drew on his own experiences, sharing stories that illustrated the importance of adaptability and respect. For instance, he told them about a time he had accidentally offended a shopkeeper in Spain by speaking too loudly, a lesson in understanding local norms. He also collaborated with marketing teams to ensure advertisements and promotional materials were culturally appropriate. One campaign aimed at Latin American audiences initially included imagery that Samuel pointed out might be misunderstood. With his guidance, the team revised the design, creating something that resonated better with the target audience. These efforts paid off when feedback from early campaigns showed overwhelmingly positive results. While Samuel focused on the expansion project, he didn't neglect his other duties. Every evening after finishing his work in the office, he returned to his cleaning cart, tidying up the spaces he had come to know so well. Pushing the cart down the hallways gave him a sense of peace, a reminder of where he had started and how far he had come. Colleagues passing by often stopped to chat, thanking him for his hard work or simply asking how his day had been. These interactions filled Samuel with gratitude, reinforcing his belief that every person, regardless of their role, has something valuable to offer. As the expansion plans progressed, Samuel's reputation spread beyond the branch office. Word reached other departments and even other branches of the company. Requests poured in for him to assist with translation projects, cultural training sessions, and client meetings. At times, the workload felt overwhelming, but Samuel tackled each challenge with determination. He reminded himself that he wasn't doing this for fame or praise. He was doing it because he genuinely wanted to help. Even outside of work, Samuel's life continued to evolve. He began attending networking events hosted by the company, mingling with professionals from various industries. Though he initially felt out of place among executives and entrepreneurs, he soon realized that his unique background gave him a distinct advantage. People were fascinated by his story. Eager to learn how he balanced humility with ambition, Samuel used these opportunities to encourage others, especially young employees, to embrace their strengths and pursue their passions without fear. Through it all, Samuel stayed grounded. Despite his growing influence, he refused to let success change him. He kept his cleaning cart nearby, a symbol of his roots and a reminder of the importance of staying humble. And though his days were busier than ever, he made time for the simple joys that brought him happiness: reading books, taking walks, and enjoying quiet moments alone. By the end of the year, Samuel's impact on the company was undeniable. The EI expansion project had been a resounding success, thanks in large part to his leadership and expertise. Employees praised him not only for his skills, but also for his kindness and dedication. What had once seemed like an ordinary existence had transformed into something extraordinary, a testament to the power of hidden potential and the importance of looking beyond appearances. And yet, through it all, Samuel remained the same man who had quietly cleaned the office floors for years. He knew that true success wasn't about titles or accolades. It was about making a difference, no matter how small. As he pushed his cart down the gleaming hallways, now bustling with activity, Samuel smiled to himself. He had found his purpose, not in seeking glory but in serving others, proving that even the simplest acts could leave a lasting legacy. As the company's expansion project gained momentum, Samuel's days became a whirlwind of activity. He was constantly on the move, balancing his old duties with his new responsibilities. Mornings started early, as always, with Samuel arriving before sunrise to clean the office. By mid-morning, he would be in meetings, offering advice on everything from language translations to cultural customs. Afternoons were spent preparing training materials or assisting teams working on international projects. Evenings often found him back at his cleaning cart, tidying up the spaces he had come to know so well. Despite the long hours, Samuel never complained. To him, every task, whether big or small, was an opportunity to contribute. One of the most rewarding aspects of his new role was seeing how his efforts impacted others. Employees who attended his cultural training sessions returned with stories of successful interactions abroad. One young marketer told Samuel how her presentation to a Japanese client went smoothly, because she remembered his tip about bowing slightly as a sign of respect. Another employee thanked him for teaching her basic Spanish phrases, which helped her build rapport during a business trip to Mexico. These moments filled Samuel with pride, knowing that his guidance was making a difference. But it wasn't just the employees who benefited. The company itself saw measurable improvements. Projects involving international clients moved forward more efficiently, thanks to clearer communication and better understanding of cultural differences. Sales numbers climbed as marketing campaigns resonated with audiences in different regions. Even internal morale improved as employees felt supported and equipped to handle challenges they once found daunting. The CEO frequently praised Samuel for his contributions, calling him the unsung hero behind the company's success. Despite all the praise, Samuel remained humble. He didn't see himself as a hero. He was simply doing what he loved: helping others succeed brought him joy. Whether it was through translating documents, sharing cultural insights, or even lending a listening ear, his colleagues admired this about him, the way he stayed grounded despite his growing influence. They began to view him not just as a coworker, but as a mentor and friend. One day, the CEO called Samuel into his office again. This time, the meeting felt different. Instead of discussing ongoing projects, the CEO handed Samuel an envelope. "Open it," he said with a smile. Inside was an official letter promoting Samuel to the position of International Liaison Officer. The title sounded impressive, but what struck Samuel most was the note at the bottom: "In recognition of your invaluable contributions and unwavering dedication." For a moment, Samuel was speechless. All these years, he had worked quietly in the background, content to let others take center stage. Now here was proof that his efforts hadn't gone unnoticed. The promotion came with new perks: a higher salary, a private office, and access to resources he had never dreamed of having. But Samuel insisted on keeping one thing unchanged: his cleaning cart. "It reminds me where I came from," he explained to the CEO. "And it keeps me humble." The CEO nodded, respecting Samuel's decision. From then on, Samuel's workspace included both a desk and his trusty cart, a unique combination that perfectly captured who he was. With his new title came even greater responsibilities. Samuel was now officially in charge of overseeing all international operations, from hiring local staff to ensuring smooth communication between branches. At first, the workload seemed overwhelming. There were days when Samuel wondered if he could keep up, but he reminded himself of something he had learned long ago. Every challenge was an opportunity to grow. Slowly but surely, he adapted, finding ways to manage his tasks efficiently while still making time for the people around him. His colleagues noticed the change in his demeanor. Gone was the quiet janitor who blended into the background. In his place stood a confident leader who inspired those around him. Yet, despite his elevated status, Samuel never lost touch with his roots. He continued to greet everyone warmly, regardless of their position in the company. He made it a point to check in with junior employees, asking how they were adjusting to their roles. And whenever someone needed help, whether it was fixing a stubborn printer or translating a tricky email, Samuel was there, ready to assist. Outside of work, Samuel's life blossomed in unexpected ways. Invitations to industry, events and conferences poured in, giving him opportunities to network with professionals from around the world. At first, he hesitated to attend, unsure if he belonged among such accomplished individuals. But over time, he realized that his unique perspective was exactly what made him stand out. People were fascinated by his journey, from janitor to liaison, officer, and eager to learn from his experiences. Samuel used these platforms to encourage others, especially young professionals, to embrace their talents and pursue their dreams fearlessly. He also took advantage of these events to expand his own knowledge. Attending lectures and workshops introduced him to new ideas and strategies, which he brought back to share with his team. His enthusiasm was contagious, inspiring others to adopt a mindset of continuous learning. Under his leadership, the company fostered a culture of growth and innovation, where everyone felt empowered to contribute. Back at the office, Samuel's presence continued to inspire positive changes. Employees began taking initiative, stepping outside their comfort zones to tackle challenges head-on. Teams collaborated more effectively, drawing on each other's strengths to achieve common goals. Even small gestures like greeting coworkers in their native languages or celebrating cultural holidays created a sense of unity and belonging. It was clear that Samuel's influence extended far beyond his official duties. He had become a catalyst for transformation. As the year drew to a close, the company held its annual award ceremony to recognize outstanding achievements. When Samuel's name was announced as Employee of the Year, the entire room erupted into applause. Colleagues cheered, some even standing to give him a standing ovation. Samuel walked onto the stage, visibly moved by the outpouring of support. Accepting the award, he spoke briefly, thanking everyone for their encouragement and emphasizing that success was a team effort. "I may have started as a janitor," he said, "but none of this would have been possible without each of you believing in me." The evening ended with heartfelt conversations and laughter as employees gathered around Samuel to congratulate him. Many shared how his story had inspired them to look beyond appearances and appreciate the hidden potential in others. Some admitted they had underestimated him at first, only to realize later how much he had to offer. These admissions weren't said with regret but with admiration, a testament to the profound impact Samuel had made. By the time Samuel left the event, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. What had once seemed like an ordinary life had transformed into something extraordinary. He had gone from being overlooked to becoming a beacon of hope and inspiration. Yet through it all, he remained true to himself, refusing to let success change who he was at his core. As he pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallways later that night, Samuel reflected on how far he had come. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, but he faced them with confidence, knowing he wasn't alone. Together with the support of his colleagues and the lessons he had learned along the way, he was ready to embrace whatever the future held. The start of the new year brought fresh opportunities and challenges for Samuel. Now officially recognized as the International Liaison Officer, he dove deeper into his role, helping the company expand its reach across borders. His days were filled with video calls, strategy meetings, and planning sessions, all aimed at building stronger connections with international partners. Yet despite the demands of his position, Samuel never lost sight of what mattered most to him, the people around him. Whether it was offering advice to a struggling colleague or taking a few extra minutes to clean up a messy break room, he remained the same kind, dependable man everyone had grown to admire. One of the biggest projects Samuel took on that year involved opening a new branch in South America. The CEO trusted him to oversee the entire process, from hiring local staff to ensuring smooth communication between teams. It was a massive responsibility, but Samuel approached it with his usual calm determination. He spent weeks preparing, studying the region's culture, language, and business practices. He even reached out to friends and acquaintances who had experience working in similar environments, asking for tips and insights. By the time the project launched, Samuel felt confident they were ready. The opening of the South American branch turned out to be a resounding success. Local employees praised the company's efforts to understand their needs and respect their traditions. Clients expressed appreciation for the personalized approach, noting how rare it was to find such attentiveness in international businesses. When the first quarterly report came in, showing strong sales and positive feedback, the CEO couldn't have been prouder. "This wouldn't have been possible without you," he told Samuel during a private meeting. "You've truly changed the way we operate." Samuel accepted the compliment graciously, though he knew the credit belonged to the entire team. He had worked closely with managers, translators, and trainers to ensure everything ran smoothly. Their hard work and dedication had made the difference, not just his own. This belief in teamwork was one of the reasons Samuel continued to inspire those around him. He didn't seek glory or recognition. Instead, he celebrated others' achievements, reminding them that success was always a collective effort. As the months passed, Samuel's influence extended beyond the workplace. Employees began adopting his mindset, looking for ways to make meaningful contributions no matter their role. Junior staff members, inspired by his journey, started stepping up, volunteering for projects and sharing innovative ideas. Even senior executives found themselves reevaluating their priorities, focusing more on collaboration and less on competition. The company culture shifted subtly but significantly, becoming more inclusive, supportive, and forward-thinking, all thanks to Samuel's quiet leadership. Outside of work, Samuel's life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. He received invitations to speak at conferences and seminars, where he shared his story of growth and resilience. Audiences listened intently as he talked about the importance of humility, perseverance, and staying true to oneself. Many attendees approached him afterward, thanking him for his words of encouragement. Some confessed they had doubted their abilities until hearing his speech, while others asked for advice on pursuing their passions. Samuel welcomed these conversations, happy to pay it forward and help others unlock their potential. He also used his platform to advocate for underappreciated workers everywhere. In interviews and panel discussions, Samuel emphasized the value of every job, no matter how small it might seem. Cleaning floors or sweeping hallways is just as important as running meetings or closing deals, he often said. Every task contributes to the bigger picture. His message resonated deeply, sparking conversations about workplace equality and recognition. People began to see janitors, assistants, and other behind-the-scenes workers in a new light, acknowledging the vital roles they played. Back at the office, Samuel continued balancing his old and new responsibilities. Though his schedule was busier than ever, he made time for the little things that brought him joy, like polishing the glass doors until they sparkled or tidying up the conference room after late-night meetings. These acts weren't just habits. They were reminders of where he had started and the importance of staying grounded. Colleagues noticed this balance and admired him even more for it. They saw how seamlessly he blended humility with ambition, proving that the two weren't mutually exclusive. By the end of the year, Samuel's legacy was undeniable. What had once seemed like an ordinary existence, cleaning office floors had transformed into something extraordinary, a journey of self-discovery, growth, and impact. He had gone from being overlooked to becoming a symbol of hidden potential, inspiring everyone around him to look beyond appearances and appreciate the extraordinary qualities within each individual. Even as his responsibilities grew, Samuel stayed true to himself. He refused to let success change his core values or alter his perspective. Pushing his cleaning cart down the gleaming hallways, now bustling with activity, Samuel smiled to himself. He knew he had found his purpose, not in seeking glory, but in serving others, proving that even the simplest acts could leave a lasting legacy. The company itself thrived under Samuel's influence. Projects succeeded, relationships strengthened, and morale soared. Employees looked forward to coming to work, knowing they were part of a supportive and dynamic environment. And while Samuel's name became synonymous with excellence, he never saw himself as anything special. To him, he was still the same man who had quietly cleaned the office for years, doing his best to make the world a little brighter. As the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, Samuel stood alone in the empty office, reflecting on the past 12 months. He thought about the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned, and the people who had supported him along the way. He thought about how far he had come, and yet how much farther there was to go. With a deep sense of gratitude, he picked up his cleaning cart and began tidying up one last time before heading home. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities, new challenges, and new ways to make a difference. But for now, Samuel allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction, knowing he had given his all and inspired others to do the same.